Welcome, warriors. We are tackling generational trauma today. My guest, like many of us these days, grew up in a dysfunctional environment, which led to her questioning her worth as a woman and as a human being. Grab a tissue and tune in to hear how a little bit of gratitude opened the floodgates. Let's rock. Does your past haunt you? Maybe you're in a storm that feels like it will never end. Are you fighting a battle that's rendering you hopeless? Maybe you feel like you're fighting alone, but your battle was not meant to be a solo endeavor. You were meant to be a warrior among warriors. My name is Heather, and I grew up thinking my battles were nobody's business until I found myself in an abusive marriage and felt cut off from all avenues of help. In this podcast, you will hear warriors' words. They will tell you of their battles, both won and lost, their journeys, and their lessons learned along the way. But we don't stop there. These warriors will share how they have applied those lessons to go from warrior to survivor to thriver. Whether it's an abusive marriage, illness, mental health crisis, or any number of traumas this world dishes out, these warriors will use their words to help you find the beauty in your broken, move beyond your battles, and become the thriver God created you to be. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome back to the Warrior Words podcast. I'm excited to share Amy's story with you today. But first, here's a little more about her. Amy Latino is a homeschooling mother to 6 children, 2 of whom have graduated, and a wife to an incredibly hardworking husband. She is a mindset coach and a health coach with the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. She also dabbles in digital marketing resell rights. Her husband is employed by the Department of the Navy, and they are currently living in Italy. She enjoys their simple and abundantly blessed life. And before we begin, here is a review from W.M. Gossett. Amazing and inspirational stories. Love this podcast. The stories are so real and inspiring. Makes you feel like you aren't alone on the journey. That last sentence warms my heart because she's right. We are not alone. While no two journeys are exactly alike, there are ways, there's always things we can learn from each other. Thank you for taking the time to leave this wonderful review. Would you like me to read your review on an upcoming episode? Please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show. Your comments and your star ratings help people find the Warrior Words podcast. It only takes a few minutes of your time, and it would help so much. Now, last week, at the end of my conversation, at the conclusion of my episode with Tanya Kubo, I opened up my Facebook community. That's kind of scary. I don't know why it's really scary. I guess maybe it's time, scary, anticipatory. I don't know. Anyway, I am looking forward to it. So I would like to formally invite you to join us there for inspirational stories, lessons learned, and beauty bombs. So I guess if you want to know what a beauty bomb is, you'll have to come join us. Facebook.com/groups/warrior words. And then request to join. There will be a couple answers. There'll be a couple questions that pop up that I would love to have you answer. Right after requesting. I'm not sure why you have to request first and then the questions, but that's how Facebook does it. So you hit the request, then the questions pop up, just answer those questions, and I'll see you inside. I look forward to getting to know all of our wonderful listeners there. Now, on to the show. Hi, everyone. as you heard in my intro today, we are blessed to have Amy Latino with us today. And welcome, Amy. Welcome to the Warrior Words podcast.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. I am very honored that you asked me to be on here. So yeah, honored. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that we had the opportunity to meet through a mutual friend, Dr. Karen Silva, who was on a couple episodes earlier in the podcast journey. And I'm so grateful to have heard your story and to have her introduce the two of us. So
Yes. Yeah, I'm very grateful for that too.
yeah,
So thank you.
she is a wonderful lady, and I enjoyed working with her and talking with her. And so
I love her spunk.
yes, definitely, definitely. So your story involves a bit of generational trauma, and we've talked a little bit about that on previous episodes. But so can you maybe start with, I guess, the beginning, kind of your upbringing and how that generational trauma kind of showed itself to you?
Yeah. And I think this will resonate with a lot of Gen Xers out there because there was a period of our upbringing where, kind of parents were allowed to check out. And we were allowed to do a lot more freer things without mom and dad knowing or without mom and dad being involved. So with that said, um, my relationship with my dad it was always rocky. Now I come from a family of altogether five siblings. I'm number four girl, and then it's my brother. And ironically enough, I remember one spiritual director saying that God gives us the amount of children or the people in our life, like a heavy gender kind of role, like, this family has like a lot of girls, this family has a lot of boys, or, because of our brokenness, because of those certain areas that we're broken in. And my dad, when he was growing up, he at 5 years old, he saw his mom die right in front of him. I mean, just drop dead. And
wow.
How does a 5-year-old process that, right?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and back then, gosh, he was born, let's see, it would have been in the 1940s, late 1940s. He would have been about 5 years old. So there was no, therapy for the kids or, hey, how you doing today? It was just mom dropped dead one day. Mom left us.
Wow.
And then my grandfather married like the wicked mother of the East. And we're talking about like, putting in closets for days at a time, throwing rocks at his head, hitting him with like, these big giant sticks, things of that. She wasn't very nice. And as a matter of fact, I think I was like around 11 or 12 years old. He had mentioned some woman's name and she just died. He said, this woman just died. I was like, oh, who was that? She goes, my stepmother. I didn't know my stepmother was my step grandmother was alive.
Oh, wow.
Like that's how broken. I believe one of my uncles put a gun to her head because she was just a mean, hurtful, spiteful person. Apparently, from all the stories that I've heard, because I've never met her, but from all the uncles and the aunts, my dad came from a family of six, I think six, and actually he had a little sister that died at the age of 1 too. So there's a lot of like just unprocessed grief.
Right.
Here's my mom dying, and then here's this wicked stepmother of the East coming in, and it shapes who he is.
Yes.
So, my mom and dad love each other, they get married, and they have these 5 children, and 4 of them happen to be girls. Like, lucky you. So growing up, our relationship was very turbulent. Is that the word? Turbulent? Am I saying
Turbulent?
Turbulent. Yes.
Tumultuous?
Tumultuous. That's the word. Yeah. At best,
Yeah.
We just never saw eye to eye. There was a lot of, oh, you're fat, you're ugly, just a lot of the abuse just trickled down, and more verbal abuse than anything else. And and well, no, there was some physical abuse. And I don't want to justify what he's done, but
Hmm.
it was more of the verb, the stuff that kind of really sticks with you for the rest of your life type
Right.
thing.
Yes.
So growing up in that teenage years of trying to discover who I am as a woman coming into age,
Hmm.
looking for love and all the boys around, like, oh, who's this guy or who's that guy? Because not having that solid foundation of my worth,
Yes.
because my worth was found in something else outside of who I was, because I was looking
Hmm.
for it. It was never affirmed.
Right.
So when I had moved out, I just started following the wrong crowd, going to bars, drinking, and doing all the things that young ladies should never do.
Right. Yes.
Did it, and I got stung. I got stung pretty bad. They were in a very pivotal point of our my relationship.
Hmm.
Is a coworker had raped me, and
Oh.
I remember when I walked into the house, my mom was crying, she hugging me, my sister was crying, she's hugging me, and my dad just turned his back and walked. Now, I don't know
Wow.
what he was thinking, but I didn't need a broken father. I needed
Right.
a me.
Yes,
I
you
needed a
did.
man at that point.
Yes.
And so that just anything around that just was, I'm done.
Hmm.
I'm done. So years had gone by, and it was in 2003 that my father had passed away, and I had had my firstborn daughter. She was a month old. He was on his deathbed, pretty much. He died of cancer, and to say that our relationship had died way before he was gone. So
Okay. Yeah.
it wasn't. So I had my daughter with me, and I remember my sister standing right next to me, and my sister going, "Isn't Amy's beautiful? Isn't Amy's daughter beautiful?" And he just looked at my sister and said, "Not as beautiful as you." So there, even
Oh
on his
my
deathbed,
goodness.
even on his
Yeah.
deathbed, he made sure that I was not affirmed in who I was as a woman. So, that's painful. It's painful to
Yeah.
hear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, after he had passed away, I'm like, gosh, this anger that I have towards him, this hurt, this all of this crap that I'm holding
Hmm.
on to,
Right.
how do I forgive him? Years of, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. How do I forgive him? How do I forgive him? How do I forgive him? And I could never quite pinpoint that that want to forgive, because I didn't want the crap anymore. I didn't want
Right.
that
Yeah. Hmm.
anger and hurt and resentment and all of this stuff. It's not worth it to me, right?
Hmm.
So it was this past April of 2022. I was sitting in my morning chair, and I have a ritual of doing a gratitude journal and things of that nature. And it was April 2nd, and that's my dad's birthday. And I noticed that. I was like, oh, today's April 2nd. My dad would have been 84 or something like that. And I wrote down, I am grateful for my dad.
Wow.
Holy stinking schmoly.
Yeah.
Just started pouring tears, just tears. It hit me like a ton of bricks, because
Yeah.
gosh, I'm gonna get emotional now, because it was in gratitude I found forgiveness. The gratitude, because if it wasn't for my dad being open to life, I would have never met my husband. I would have never found forgiveness for my rapist. I would have never have had my children. I would have never
Hmm.
known my Sophia or my John Paul or my Joseph or my Dante or my Francesco or my Sienna. I would have never have known those. I would have never have known love in a very true and deep, beautiful way through my husband, because
Yeah.
he honors who I am. I mean, it was just like boom, I am crying, and I'm crying, calling my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I'm so sorry. Like, because of all the 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 vitriol that I would spew at my dad for being blah, 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 this and that.
Yes.
And that part of where I needed to apologize. I needed to seek that forgiveness as well, because I was angry, and in that anger I wanted to hurt back.
Right.
And so I did. And my mom crying on the phone. I'm crying on the phone. Everybody's crying. But it was just such a moment of release. And I couldn't believe that it wasn't particularly forgiveness that had set me free from the prison that I was in. It was the gift of gratitude, saying thank you for saying yes to life. Thank
Wow.
you.
Yes.
And thank you for putting that roof over my head. Thank you for putting those clothes on my back. Thank you for putting the food on the table. Thank you for having the running water. Thank you for putting the pool up. It was like all the things that I had missed. It's kind of like almost akin to the story of the people of Egypt. They're walking through the parting of the Red Sea.
Right.
Red Sea goes down, and then they start grumbling. You forget the good, the stuff that was right. I mean, he was a prolific gardener. Oh my gosh, he could boom, and it spring life, and huge. And that's how he provided for his family. It was something that he loved, but that's how he provided for us still. In his brokenness, he still found a way to love us in his way that he could.
Right. Right.
In all of his brokenness and all of his crap that he went through. So that for me was oh my gosh, such a beautiful, my heart is like overjoyed right now. So much of the love and thank you, Dad, for just doing that. I know we didn't have a great relationship, but dang, you did the best that you could, what you had at that moment. And while it was
that, yes.
little, in my esteem, it was still something. He was still broken. He was still a man trying to find his own identity in life, through these things. So that is that story in a nutshell, just coming forth, looking at that gratitude, that beauty of life within that ugliness, like we were saying, beforehand, is that you can still find beauty in the crappiest of situations.
Yes. And there's so much that you said that just, I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but I wiped away a tear as you were talking. Wow, I don't even really know where to begin, and I guess that's horrible for a podcast host. But but there was so much that you said, and I think that one of the things was that you said he did the best he could with what he had, and that piggybacks on when you said that in his time when he was a child, there weren't resources for when you're a 5-year-old. How do you deal with that, with death and abandonment? And when the person who is supposed to take care of you is now gone.
Yeah.
There's you go inside and you do what you have to do, and then you're given a really poor substitute. I mean, nobody can ever replace your mother. That's just, you just can't. You cannot replace someone. But then you're given a poor substitute and a poor example who's teaching you the worst possible lessons.
Yeah.
Again, you don't want to excuse or dismiss the behavior and the actions that he took, but there's some understanding of where that behavior comes from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a blessing for you, because you were you were gifted with the ability to, even though it was in retrospect, to be able to see that.
Yeah.
And
it unraveled all at that particular moment that, as if I were to see my dad now, rather than coming at him with the resentment and the hurt and the anger, it would be, hey, can we start over?
Yes.
So, and that's where I wanted to be in those years after he had passed away. because, at that point, I'm growing up.
Hmm.
Um, I'm realizing the finite person that I am, like death is gonna come.
Exactly.
It's that
Yeah.
point. And how am I going to translate my life to my children now? Am I going to beat them down? Am I going to, oh no, of course not. I'm gonna choose a different path. And while I'm
Hmm.
not perfect, obviously, and I'm sure I could pull one of these kids over and they'd be like, yeah, let me tell you about the time.
Yes.
But at least I'm open to hearing about that time, and
Yes.
where I remember as a teenager, we had pleaded for my dad to go to counseling, and he was like, absolutely not. And I
Yeah.
think in that generation before the Gen Xers, that was just unheard of. You don't do that. That's a weak thing. That's a weak man thing,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the truth of that of his story, of his journey, is that you didn't do that because you were considered weak. And um but
Yeah.
so I want my children to be able to come to me and say, hey mom, do you remember that time? Can we talk about that? And I've
Hmm.
encouraged them, hey, if I've done anything, let me know. Maybe we can sit down and have that difficult conversation.
And
So
some people may disagree with this assessment, but to me that sounds like, again, looking at it in retrospect, that it's almost, and I just hesitate to use the word, but I'm going to use it anyway, a gift.
mhm, yeah.
You learned a lesson, and the behavior wasn't the gift, but the
Right.
lesson learned from it is the gift. And that is, you learned what not to do. You learned
Yes.
you learned how to take similar situations that your dad would have faced and handle them differently so that
Hmm.
you can break that generational cycle with your kids.
Hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it was interesting because when you say it in that respect, we get each other. Because I think it's contemplating on the the hurt and the brokenness and all of the stuff that we have gone through in our lives. Um, it's that wanting to see the salvation in Christ's suffering. It's
Yes.
looking for that. I'm intentionally looking for it
Hmm.
because looking at Jesus on the cross with all the whips and all the crown of thorns and the nails, and that's ugly
It
for
is.
anyone.
Yes.
It's
Hmm.
ugly. But I'm looking at that salvation. I am looking at the beauty of it. And that's,
Yes.
you know, that gift,
Hmm.
right? So when you look at the rape, when you look at how he was brought up or how I was brought up, in those pieces, you're looking for, hey, that's a garden in there. Hey, that's a pool that he provided for us. And we had great memories. Um, that's uh it's how, I guess it's how, what we're focusing on, in that shift
Hmm.
of, again, it's not to excuse the behavior, but it's to
Right.
look at the gift of, wow, look at that lesson that he taught me. Look
Hmm.
at how I've grown. Look at how I've skilled up and done all the good things.
Yeah.
I mean, it
And
is.
yeah.
I believe that.
And that was another thing that you had said earlier in your story that I wanted to bring up. And I've talked to a few people who, when they encounter that moment of forgiveness, um, it's like their eyes were opened and they were able to
Mhm.
see things differently. I mean,
Yeah.
literally see things differently. One woman
Mhm.
described actually seeing the green of leaves on a tree, and they were brilliantly green. And
Uh-huh.
another woman described sunsets. She's like, that sunset is pink. I've never seen a
Mm.
pink sunset before. And then her husband reminded her, well, they happen every day. And she said, I just never saw
Wow.
it. And so these women described similarly to what you're describing, even though you didn't use actual colors, you used memories. of things
Mhm.
that you could now see that maybe you didn't see before. The garden, the pool, the
Yeah.
food, the clothing, some things that so many of us just take for granted,
Mhm.
food and clothing, running
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
And it, we need to be grateful for these little things just as
Mhm.
much as we are grateful for big things
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they are gifts just the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
it's, yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, even in his brokenness, your dad provided those things for you. And just a
Yeah.
gift to see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't change anything for the world. All of the
Mm.
journey that I've been through, absolutely not. And now I would, God want me to go through the same exact thing. No, obviously not. He doesn't like that,
Right, exactly.
but I wouldn't be the woman who I am today, whom I'm very proud of, whom I'm very grounded in. Um, and I know whose I am,
Yes.
so in that, um, in that beauty and in that ugliness that I see everything, I see all that now, in hindsight, it's, I wouldn't change it. No,
That's a
I'm my
huge,
daughter.
that is a huge testament to
Yeah.
what you experienced and the healing in
Mhm.
Christ, the healing
Yes.
that you experienced. And
Yeah.
yeah, that only comes from him. Yeah. That is.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I remember, so as we were talking about how I met my husband, it was
Mhm.
through the missionary group that I was with, SALT. And so at that particular point in my life, I didn't know how to be treated as a woman because it was so confusing to me. I was like, wait a minute, I thought I was just supposed to be, used and abused and that's it. And I
Mhm.
remember going on the first date with my husband and he pulled out the chair for me. I was like, what the heck are you doing? And then he paid for it. He paid for the meal and, he just complimented me and it was so uncomfortable.
Wow. Yeah. Because it's not something you were used to. Yeah.
Yeah, and praise God that I went through the SALT. So SALT is a community of people where Father Flanagan's vision was to have the laity and the religious to work together on a mission. They're heavily in Belize right now, and I think in Guam. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but they're in Texas too, and all that stuff. And that was his vision, and that's where we started off from. Is that uh, I was in a group with laity and religious, and we're working together. And I had the Eucharist every day. I had Mass every day. We prayed the Rosary. It was a literal spiritual boot camp, is what I went through. And it was in that we studied the documents of the church. We studied Pope John Paul's theology of the body, and it was through that I became aware of how God views women.
Mhm.
Because God the Father to me, especially after the rape, God the Father to me was not a good father.
Mm.
So
Understandable. Yeah.
I would, and even I remember kind of was like, I know Jesus died for me, but he's still a man. Like these men in my life have not been good. So I kind of shimmied over to the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit is a dove. He's a flame. Like he didn't. For me, he doesn't possess that masculine, overtly masculine quality.
Right.
And so I just remember it was like, all right, for some way, somehow I just, and I stay close to Our Lady too. So it was them two. And I really kind of honed in and, I realized that I was talking to the triune God. I realized all that, but
Right.
in my, you know, in my human head, I had to break it down somehow because I
Mhm.
knew that the answer was in here somewhere. And when I was able to get my hands on the theology of the body and actually Christopher West's explanation of it all blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. And that was that journey of being grounded in who I am. And it was actually, again, then through the women's school that I became even more grounded in who I am as a woman and a beloved daughter of God.
Which you are.
who is,
Yes.
yeah, who is worthy of admiration, acceptance, and all the things that are good, holy, and beautiful. Because God is good, holy, and beautiful.
Yes, he
So
is.
those are powerful things to have in somebody's toolbox.
And that's a great example. That's a perfect
Mhm.
example. Well, thank you, Amy, for sharing like all those gifts and the realizations that you had after this work of gratitude led you to forgiveness. So now I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing today. So how are you thriving now that you've gone through this forgiveness process? You've really dived into gratitude. Now, I mean, are you still doing this daily gratitude practice?
I try to. I have gone off the bandwagon for it for a little while. Partly because we had moved from Florida to Sicily, hence the background.
The beautiful background.
Yeah, the beautiful background, the Italian background. And so in that, all of throwing 8 people from one culture into the next, it was a little jarring for us.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but I have started to get on it. Just actually, I want to say last week, I was like, man, I got to go back to my gratitude, my wins, and all of that
Hmm.
stuff. So a lot of the healing process was through the women's school that I went through in 2019. At that particular point in my life, I had experienced 3 miscarriages and the loss of my sister,
Hmm.
who was my best friend at the time. And so having that depletion there as well, I came across the women's school and I became a women's school wholeness coach with them. And it's a 8-month program that just really kind of dives you into the 8 arenas of a woman's life,
Hmm.
um, her self-image, her health, which is physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. Um, you dive into the friendships, intimacy, the contribution, the environment, the wealth, and a woman's family life, and
Hmm.
how that's all viewed. And so I became a coach with them, and then I also became a health coach with the Institute for the Psychology of Eating, because I've dealt with yo-yo dieting and binge eating forever. And so I based a lot of my coaching methods off of the women's school. So now I also have this other group called Dish It Out, and you can find it there. That Find it on Facebook. Yeah, Dish It Out. So
We'll get a
it's
link.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just on Facebook. I don't have a link. Do I have a link? I might have a link to my Facebook.
We'll take a look.
Yeah, we'll take a look. We'll link it in the comments. Dish it
Yeah.
out. And I did that. I'm doing that type of coaching also with what I'm currently doing is digital marketing resale rights. And that is with the legacy program. And you could, that one, I have a website too. It's www.holisticwealthymama.com. And that one, so what I really love about this is I've taken the women's school and all of the coaching that I've gotten, and I loved how we approach wealth,
Hmm.
and that is in the 3: time, treasure, and talent.
Yes.
And what is the purpose of wealth? It is for sustained generosity.
Yeah.
So when you have that time and you have enough of it to give, when you have that treasure and you have enough of it to impact your family, but to also impact the world around you.
Mm. Yeah.
And then you have your talent. What is that talent? Well, sometimes you need funds, right? To
Yes.
acquire that talent, to kind of hone it in, that art, the sewing, the golf, the soccer, whatever it is that your child is, piano lessons, guitar lessons, you need wealth for that. So in the digital
Right.
marketing world, that is what I help people do, is to create income lines of 4 income lines that they come in with. So, gosh, I'm not explaining that well. 4 lines of income, and I also help coach, and that the coaching is free for that. So if that's something that you're struggling with paycheck to paycheck or payday broke day.
Oh, I can relate.
Yeah. So just go to that www.holisticwealthymama.com, because we look at wealth as a whole in the
Yeah.
holistic way.
Yes. I do like that approach, because it's not just one thing and, you fix this one thing and then everything else magically fixes. No,
Yeah,
it
no,
doesn't work that way. Yeah, it doesn't work that
no,
way.
no, and especially within the woman's sphere, you know, like I said, we touch on the health, and that's the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being of a woman in the women's school, and that has been paramount to the building blocks of everything else. Because if you're, like, how we describe it is, like if you're in a car, so the car is the physical part of you,
Okay.
the engine is the emotional part of you, the mental is the person who is driving, and the spiritual is the roadmap. So you
Okay.
have
Yeah.
this whole, you know, if the mental isn't working, the physical isn't going to work. And if
Correct.
the
Yeah.
emotional isn't working, we're never going to get to that spiritual end, right? Like, so
Yeah.
all of
Makes
them
sense.
have to work together in order to drive forward and to be able to lay those foundations for herself, image, on how, on why she was created, why is she valued,
Right. Yeah.
why are you valued? Because there's never, ever, ever going to be another Heather that from the past or the future. Heather is
Right.
here. And that's what makes her so valuable. Right. And so many women need to hear that.
I agree. Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
I even in this me focused culture that we seem to be in, the selfie trending and all of that, I think we're still not taught who we are,
Right.
whose we are,
Yeah.
and why we're valued as who and whose we are.
Simply because you exist as a beloved daughter.
Yes, exactly.
All those selfies, all that posting on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, nothing compares to that.
No.
Because your value is in him, not in anything else around. So yeah, when you're doing that, you're doing it for an end to its mean, or means to an end, right? That selfie is, I'm there to put it out there to the world that this is who I am. But do you really know? Because like if that selfie, if that computer crashed, if that all of a sudden everything just stopped, would you know who you are?
Right.
Can you stand on your own 2 feet, knowing that your worth is not in your credit? Your worth is not in, um, you know, that next boyfriend, that next body count. And, no, your
Oh,
worth
so
is,
so
huh?
profound. So profound. Yes.
It is. It is. Yes. And this is what I love to do. I love to coach women. Anyways, yeah. Sorry. Go coaching. Sorry.
So should we
Coaching women.
we'll go, yeah, we'll do a coaching session live, right? No.
I love it. I love coaching. I love helping people both in all of the realms of a woman, and yeah, I love all of it.
Well, I was going to ask you to share with us some warrior words. And unless you have anything different that you wanted to say, I think what you just said was so profound about a woman's worth. And yeah, we are fearfully and wonderfully made in his image, and that's what gives us value.
Yes.
So,
Yes. It's so unique and so beautiful and so important. Yes, you are important, and not because you are, you offer your Harvard degree. It's not because of that. You know,
right.
just because of who you are as that person, without the Harvard degree or with a Harvard degree or whatever, like that has blown my mind. And
Mhm.
when you take that knowledge from knowing our worth, and then you take the theology of the body and you're understanding um just I don't know, the magic of who we are, like the beauty. I mean, it is. It's like it's almost like a magical thing.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so
wow.
hard. Yeah, it's so hard for our human brains to to wrap. Yes,
Yes,
yes.
the the beauty. Yeah. So that's that. Yeah. We can see if you want,
Well,
but
I think that that's too why I focus on beauty because I include in my bio that I like to spend time with the master artist, and it's it, there's so much beauty in this world. I look at the background behind you, and two things stand out: ruins of a civilization that thought they were invincible,
yeah,
yet these ruins still stand, and there's still beauty, and there's probably, I don't know them, but probably many stories of positive things that happened between those pillars and columns. And it's just, there's just so much beauty in the world that we need to, I think we need to just start recognizing all that beauty. And,
yes.
yeah,
No, I was
yeah,
gonna say last September, Andre Pacelli performed at this. This is the amphitheater in Taormina. And if you guys ever want to look at Taormina, yes, I actually live an hour from that place because it's just beautiful. And when you say like, yeah, look at that, Andre Bocelli got to sing here.
yeah,
That's kind of cool.
yeah, it is.
Cool. There
Yeah,
is beauty. Yes.
yes, there is.
Yeah.
So, well, Amy, I so appreciate this conversation, and I think we could probably go an hour more, but we've already gone over what I promised you. And
Oh my gosh. I
um
talk. I'm sorry.
no apologies necessary. No, I have enjoyed the conversation, and I love that we have gone from some horrific events, some horrific behaviors, um, and horrific ways of dealing things to forgiveness and gratitude and the beauty, and realizing that there was beauty in there, even if you couldn't see it at the moment you were experiencing it.
Right.
And and I hesitate to say, but it's beautiful. The whole process itself is beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm using the word in its own definition, but it's beautiful, and it's a gift. And you have been a gift to both me and anyone who hears this episode.
Thank
And
you.
so I am so grateful for your
It's my
time.
pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very honored, and I loved our conversation.
Yes,
It's
I
been
did.
wonderful.
I did
I really,
too. And I will make sure to get the links that you mentioned to your website and the coaching that you mentioned. I'm also going to put a link to Christopher West's Theology of the Body because
yes.
some people might want to explore what that is if they're not familiar with Christopher West or the whole theology of the body concept. So thank you for
Yeah.
bringing that up. And
Oh, you're most welcome.
yeah, all right. Well, thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate this. Thank you so much. I'm very honored. All right.
All right.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
That was an incredible conversation. I told Amy after we stopped recording that there was probably a bit more that I could have talked about with regard to her story, but we had already gone over the time I promised her, and it was evening in Italy. Can we talk about that for a sec? I'm in the US and she's in Italy. And the world is just so small now. And it's so cool. Last week, I read a review from someone in South Africa. And today I looked at my analytics, and the Warrior Words podcast is heard in 12 countries outside of the US. That's just mind boggling to me that, I sit here and my little office and record a podcast for you, and people in 13 different countries have heard it. Wow. But God, only God, right? So thank you. Thank you all for your support from around the world. I truly appreciate it. But let's get back to today's conversation. I love how Amy's story really exemplified my goal for this podcast. She shared how the lessons she experienced from her trauma and her father's helped to shape the woman that she is today. Her experiences are helping her to raise her kids differently. So many times, I think we as humans, we repeat what we experienced as if that was the only way to do something. But Amy chose a different path. Instead, she shared that she knew she wanted to do it differently. She not only learned a lesson, but she applied that lesson. And because of that shift, the chances of her kids continuing this cycle of generational trauma, those chances have significantly decreased, maybe even been eliminated. Wow. Then it was her practice of gratitude that led her to forgiving her father. As she mentioned, the emotions just started flowing out of her the moment she realized she was not only grateful for her father, but she had forgiven him. She was able to see the garden, the pool, food, and clothes, but especially life itself, all as gifts from her father. Her eyes were opened to the beauty that existed in the brokenness. And that too is a gift. I want to challenge everyone listening to start or restart a practice of gratitude. And there are many ways to do this. You could do it daily, you could do it weekly, whatever timetable works for you and your schedule. You could write it in a journal you could use the Notes app on your phone. You could create social media posts. You could express gratitude via prayer. Any or all of the above that I just listed. And there's probably a dozen other ways that you could probably come up with. Any of them would be a great way to start. Now, I realize that this may not be as easy as I am making it sound. I know some people find it difficult to find even one thing to be grateful for. I know because I've been there and I understand that feeling very deeply. However, I also know that once you start being grateful, even for the little things that we tend to take for granted, like food, like oxygen to breathe, like running water, we just, in today's world, we just expect those things. But maybe we need to be grateful for them. So once you start being grateful for even these little things, it becomes easier and easier to see things, to find things for which to be grateful. Your eyes were once blind to it, but now you can see. That may or may not have been adapted to from one of my favorite songs. So, for what are you grateful? There's something to think about this week. But before I go, I wanted to touch on something else that was so important. Amy had to learn her value and her worth because she didn't learn it growing up. And she discovered that neither of those things We're rooted in what society normifies. That's not really a word, is it? I don't think so. But what society tells us is value. Her value, her worth as a human being, comes only from the fact that she is a daughter of the King, fearfully and wonderfully made in his likeness. And so are you. Let me say that again. You are valued. You are worthy simply because he made you and you are his. If no one else tells you this today, I want you to know that you are loved. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.